So we will begin. We have people online, of course, who are ready for us to start on time. So let me just say welcome to everybody. It's good to have you all here. And we begin now the third and final day of the, I think, very interesting and inspiring conference. We've heard over the last couple of days a very wide range of perspectives and ideas, discussion on emerging grand challenges, global issues, and some very innovative scientific approaches to what we might be thinking about for the future. And of course, some reflections on how our academies can strengthen their voice and their visibility in the policy arena. I know that, like me, many of you will have found yourselves thinking with these discussions how to connect back to your own academy's work and your national context, and of course, together through the IAP, how we can turn some of these ideas into actions. Today's program gives us a chance to build on all of that, to look towards some next steps and consider how we sustain the connections that we have established beyond this meeting in Cairo. And I would encourage everybody to be thinking along those lines, to continue with engaging with each other, with those you've met at this meeting, still asking questions and thinking about new partnerships as we go through this final day. I do want once again to thank the hosts of our meeting, the Academy of Scientific Research and Technology, for their amazing support and very warm hospitality. You have made us feel very welcome and at home here in Egypt. For many of us, I think a first time in Egypt. So I think we are ready to begin our next session. And on a personal note, since I am part of the next session, the panel are here and ready to join us. I hope we can keep the bar high and deliver as well as some of our speakers have done over the past couple of days. This session is going to be, I think, a little different and I hope interesting. So let me invite my co-panelists to come up and our moderator to come up and start the session for us. Thank you. Yes.
Good morning, and a welcome to a very important and exciting session today. Nothing is more exciting than AI, and we are going to be looking in this session at some very important aspects of AI and its impact on society. The session is on responsible and sustainable AI for society. So there are three keywords: responsible, sustainable, and society, and looking at the impact of AI on all the different aspects of societal functioning. It's really the ESG of AI that we are looking at here. ESG is environment, society, and governance. So while we look at the environmental aspects of AI, about 6% carbon footprint is because of digital cyber processes. So it already has a very wide footprint. If you look at the environmental aspects, of course, that this is going to go up a lot in the coming decades. The societal aspect as well as aspect related to cognitive impact of AI is already a very well-researched area. So as we go into the next decade, this is going to have some very, very serious impact on our cognitive processes. So there are great opportunities, there are great challenges ahead. Governance is a very important aspect because really, if we look at the impact of AI, is in policy and what kind of actions that need to be undertaken. So here we would look at also the roadmap for action and policy. And the action and policies are on three scales: an individual scale, a researcher, an organization, and then the government, the nation, which looks at the rules and regulations and governance aspects. But we also need a global governance of AI because a whole lot of this is really it transcends borders. So what we have here, I think about the most important thing that one could discuss this decade and the next, and indeed the whole century, because AI has a beginning but has no end. It's going to be transformative. And so we want to look at all the different aspects of that transformation going forward. The session will look at regional and global frameworks for the ethical and sustainable governance of AI and other transformative technologies. So we had some other transformative technologies in mind, but I think that we are just going to be focusing on AI, based on the expertise of the panel here. Highlight the environmental, equity, and inclusive governance challenges posed by new technologies across the entire globe and different societies. Explore how technological innovation aligns or conflicts with local values, economic development, and social priorities. Provide actionable recommendation for science academies, policymakers, and stakeholders in fostering responsible research, ethical deployment, and collaborative governance of emerging technologies. So that's a heavy agenda, and we got about 90 minutes to go through it. At the end of it, there would be 20 minutes of discussion, question, answers. Please bring forth your views on it. They would be very useful. They would help us make a white paper, a kind of vision document on the presentations which would be made here. Indeed, thank you very much again. Thanks all the panelists. Thank the Egyptian Academy for this great session, for hosting us here. Let me call on the first speaker. Your time would be 10 minutes. And after your presentation, well, you can decide to sit here or to sit there. Either way is fine. So I call upon Professor Stephanie Burden. She would from Academy of Science of South Africa, also a senior professor at University of Pretoria, and she would talk about impact of AI developments on doctoral education, ethics, research integrity, and assessment.
I think it's easier if I sit, so I hope you'll understand because the screen is in front of me. So my take on this is perhaps a slightly unusual one, and that is because I have a lot of activity and a background in postgraduate training, and AI developments on training of doctoral students has become something of a topic, I think, all around the world. So let me briefly talk about what I think the impact is and what we should be considering. If you think about the context in higher education, which is not something we've discussed all that much in this meeting, but it's certainly an important one if we think about our early career researchers. And there's a context for all of that, which comes from our institutions and how research intensive they are, what kind of resources they have. There's expectations of postgraduate programs and expectations particularly of the student, but more importantly, perhaps in this context, the expectations of the public who would like to be sure that they can trust what we are doing and that they see transparency in what our postgraduates are learning and in the knowledge, the new knowledge they are creating. I'll come back to new knowledge in a moment. There's also expectations that we have as academies, as academics, as universities around academic excellence. And what we consider to be academic excellence is something of a moving target at the moment. But very broadly, I think we aim to prepare our students to be global citizens with all of these qualities that are listed here, and in particular research integrity, which I'll come back to. Where we are at the moment is, I think, very simplistically, and I'm not the expert on a technical expert on AI, but where we are is where we have this rapid emergence of AIs and very much an opportunity to transform research, but also, of course, to change the way we educate. AI systems are not all that new in that we have them in our phones and all of our gadgets and so on, but the advances have had a big impact on the way in which we consider academic activities. So what changed? Well, the thing that really changed was, first of all, the availability of huge amounts of data, which is not only confined to the biological sciences, of course, but to many different areas. And then the fact that generative AIs can make images, text, language, videos. They can organize unorganized data, and they can put unorganized data into words and documents. And the big difference, of course, is the fact that that can be done in a very quick and effective way, and then allows us to generate new ideas. So what can they do? Okay, so the writing that's in blue here is mine, and the writing that comes up in red comes from ChatGPT. So the large language models can start with data sets, find trends, patterns, and what's more, they can do it very fast. So they assist with research by going through all of that information processing and manipulating the text and writing new text for us, perhaps changing style, but certainly looking for information. ChatGPT, and of course all the other AIs, are large language models. They have a chatbot interface, which means you feel as if you're talking to them. And they can write essays and articles, and you can, of course, ask them to do it in an academic style. And then they appear to be thinking like we do. But of course, and although they can generate ideas, and that can perhaps spark our ideas, do need to remember that they can also synthesize data, which might be artificial, and they can produce what are called hallucinations. So these new technologies then are posing a whole lot of new questions for us. How are they going to actually help us? And the new questions that we need to be asking are, how do we do research and exploit the AIs? And how do we make sure that we have research integrity for our students and in our students? There is also a question of research data, of course, which is becoming increasingly important and more challenging as data gets bigger. Particularly when we talk about publicly funded research, which many of our students do engage in, then we're going to need very, very watertight, if you like, global systems for managing all of that data. So when we talk about research integrity, what are we talking about? Well, essentially, we're talking about what we consider to be moral challenges, moral problems. And ethics is our way of working out how to address a moral challenge. What's the right thing to do? So now we have to think about the right thing to do with respect to AI. And there's lots of different ways of thinking about that in terms of schools of thought and ethical systems and the values that inform our ethics. I'm not an ethics expert in that I'm not a professor of philosophy in that sense, but we do need to think how ethics applies now that we have so much to think about, which is new, and our students need to think about it. So let's think about a doctoral degree. Now, this is a lot of words and I won't read them all, but in my own environment, we have a Council for Higher Education, and we have documentation which lays out guidelines. And this is so-called standard for a doctoral degree, which lays out graduate attributes, what we think a doctoral student should achieve by the time they have achieved their PhD or their doctoral degree. And essentially that comes to a contribution of new knowledge. And the writing in red, this is not ChatGPT, this is me. The candidate does need to be able to demonstrate research capability and original academic contributions at the forefront, but they also need to do it with integrity. And of course, then all of those issues around things like training and communication become important. So how can AIs help us with that? Well, they can certainly help with analyzing data. They can help us to do it faster, and they can inspire new thinking. They can also be very helpful in improving writing style, which can save a lot of time. This is what ChatGPT says. If you ask an AI, it says that they can enable advancing research, they can revolutionize the way researchers approach their work, and they can be powerful tools. Well, I leave you to read all of this when you go back to these slides. But of course, the AIs will put a very positive spin on what they can do. What they can do is help us with things like literature review, information retrieval, building a huge data landscape with their assistance. So the literature searching part, the writing skills, those things we know are useful, and they can assist with that synthesizing of new data, new ideas. And another one that they can help with is linking us with other researchers, finding experts in our field or others who are interested in what we are doing, and suggesting ways to communicate. ChatGPT says that it can enhance writing and analytical skills through natural language processing, and can provide constructive feedback. Well, I think there's opinions about how constructive the feedback always is, but they can make suggestions about improving style. And ChatGPT also says they can enhance the quality of our written work and our students' written work. I think one of the things that is useful is the capacity for collaborative research. I'm not sure why these slides are not showing anymore. They are behind me. Oh, thank you. They're not over there. But I think they can assist us with linking across large distances and interdisciplinary gaps, and allowing us opportunities to meet each other and work together. So what are the implications for academic research? Well, there's all these new things that we can do, but it does challenge autonomy, accountability, and responsibility. And there are implications with all of that. So we do need to make sure that we add training to enable our students to be aware of the AIs. And that means developing ways of using the AIs, but adhering to our values of openness and transparency and correct attribution of ownership. So the academic community needs to think about what is truly original and innovative. And we need to think about things like digital literacy and skills with AI responsibility, and acknowledging any assistance that is used from the AI tools. And the graduates need to learn to navigate all of those challenges, which is certainly something new. So in terms of the ethical issues, there are privacy concerns, possible biases, there are challenges to maintaining our academic values. We need to make sure there's transparency in acknowledging the purposeful use of AIs. And remember that AIs are not always as good as humans at imagining, and they can be very vulnerable. So what we need is to focus on academic integrity, make sure that academics and supervisors are informed, and that we can critically evaluate any information that is generated within those ethical frameworks. This is just about the last, but the doctoral students have a very fine line now to tread. They need to use AI tools. They need to make sure they maintain the authenticity of their own intellectual contributions. They still need to learn to write. They still need to learn to reason. and to argue and to understand about cheating and plagiarism. And AIs can't replace the teachers and the supervisors and the mentors. So, because there is a need to test truth and logic, and that remains a human activity. So we need new guidelines for publishing. We need to clarify what is original new knowledge. We need to make sure that our ethical frameworks take into account all of these new considerations. Plagiarism detection systems, well, we need to adapt them in some way because they certainly aren't relevant as they are at the moment. And we need to have things like checks on the use of secondary data and where it came from, and protocols to make sure that AI-generated data is authentic or is acknowledged as being AI-generated. So when we assess a doctoral degree, we still need to look at independent learning, which we always said was something that a doctoral student needs to achieve. We still need to see a piece of original research or creation of new knowledge. We still need to be able to discuss, the student still needs to be able to discuss those findings. So what's the problem? Well, we need new definitions for things like originality and whose work it is and who wrote the thesis. And is that an original contribution? The student needs to demonstrate the independent learning and the new knowledge. So some of the simple ideas are, well, there must be an oral, in-person, present examination, and that does depend very much on the institution and external examiners and so on. But the candidate still needs to show full knowledge of the topic, the field, and the research. And the candidate must be able to present their work and argue their case, defend, if you like, the thesis, and demonstrate advocacy for the discipline and achievement of all those lofty graduate attributes. They need to demonstrate awareness of what they did in the way of using AIs. And of course, then there's other opportunities in terms of oral exams. So concluding that, we have this new artificial intelligence development, and students need to adjust in terms of academic freedom, accountability, and autonomy. So integrating AI into doctoral education presents opportunities and challenges. And it's a delicate balance between the advantages and those core values of academia. So as we develop our doctoral programs into this AI era, we need to think very hard about digital literacy, ethical considerations, and critical thinking, which remains paramount. And the future of doctoral education is going to be with equipping those scholars to leverage AI responsibly, but to maintain the human touch. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Burton. Very, very interesting presentation. I now invite Professor Ramia Al-Bakane, representing TWAS, Professor of Chemistry at University of Jordan at Amman. And she would talk about AI in basic sciences, chemistry and biology, and the Global South AI Act. Oh, I would signal after 8 minutes to the speakers, okay, so that we limit to our time. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here as part of session 7 alongside the distinguished speakers on this panel as we focus on responsible and sustainable AI for society. We'll share with you how AI is shaping scientific progress, particularly in chemistry and biology, and how this impacts particularly the Global South. In fact, in both chemistry and biology, AI is accelerating scientific discovery. I'm talking from analytical chemist point of view. It enables us as researchers to process complex data sets, since we have always in analytical chemistry a huge data set, and also generate insights rapidly and model molecular interactions with higher precision level. Importantly, AI also lowers the barrier for innovative researchers, especially us in the Global South, meaning that researchers do not always need expensive labs or long experimental cycles to make discoveries, since in the Global South, the majority of our laboratories lack of facilities and fund. Where there is a persistent lack, as I mentioned, for research facilities, at the Global South, limited financial support and inadequate infrastructure to properly conduct scientific experiments. How AI could act at the Global South? In fact, as I mentioned, research at our region in the Global South is often constrained by cost, limited infrastructure, and lack of advanced laboratory facilities. So using AI will offer a unique equalizing power. With open source models and cloud-based platforms, researchers in chemistry and biology at our region can simulate experiments and analyze large amounts of data with minimal physical infrastructure that we lack of. This can support us in different aspects of research, such as disease-related studies, climate-based research, water purification research, agriculture improvement, and much more. However, a traditional wet lab experiment, such as in chemistry and biology, can take months or years. I'm talking from my point of view, since I'm working in a project since 4 years. And it's not finished up to now. And it costs millions. So AI supported screening or simulation can bring that down significantly, especially in our region. AI also enhances learning cycles, not only for us as researchers, but also for young researchers, early career academics, students, to experiment and validate ideas rapidly. This, in fact, will accelerate innovation, and it accelerates innovation at our region. It means that breakthroughs can come from anywhere, not only from advanced laboratories. So I would like to share with you a case study, in fact, from our project. I am approach in lab. We had to develop the analytical strategy for identifying the chemical contents. The strategy took us around 5 full months. Started the work in France, started in November 2024 till 2025 March. But for sure, as I mentioned to you, we started the project 4 years ago by developing extraction, etc. 5 researchers and the students were working, I'm not exaggerating if I will say 24/7, even during the weekend. We did a rotation, 3 shifts, A, B, C, together to reach, in fact, to a developed strategy using different equipments to develop the best method in chemistry provided by a French lab. After 5 months, we obtained the analytical results experimentally. We found that each plant, we have 150 plants. Each plant contains at least 200 unknown compounds, as you can see in this slide. This is the minimum. Some of our plants have, for example, 300 or 500. So obtaining the result was not the issue. The issue, the identification of each compound, is needed through buying a library license, which is for us at the Global South is expensive. This license set up in the machine along with the team to run the comparison between the results, the experimental results, and the library identification. I will assure you that it was a hectic job. Now, the challenge for us as a chemist that each compound has to be identified by comparing the data set with the experimental result. For us, it took us for each plant 1 day, only for each plant. So if you imagine we have 150 by 3 trials, so it was a hectic job. In fact, as I mentioned to you, it took us a long journey to reach the result that I present here from April 2025 till present, and we didn't finish, since we are running the identification manually. So it is time consuming, effort consuming, and financial consuming, in fact. Therefore, we decided to implement AI as a test for identifying the highest and the major contents of each plant. Couldn't get, I will say, because I was Dr. mentioned that when I'm asking GPT, I have a conversation with someone because I put a sentence. Can you please do the 10 seconds to have the results, where manually it was for 1 day for each plant. So can you imagine 1 day effort versus 10 seconds? For us, it is a big achievement as researchers. However, as chemists and biologists, we need to make sure that our results are certain and validated. Therefore, we took random samples, me and my team, and compared the manual results carried on by the team with the results obtained or the outcomes obtained by AI. And we were surprised that the compatibility rate was high, which means that we can save time and effort by implementing AI and, let's say, with negligible error. So I presented here the advantages of AI, but I will not speak about the challenges. I will leave it to Dr. Singham, who will present you the ethical issues and the challenges. So we'll conclude here by emphasizing that as researchers, AI is not replacement for scientific thinking or scientific personage. Rather, it amplifies our capabilities as researchers at the Global South, accelerates discoveries, and opens doors for better education, better sciences, and fair access to innovation. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor El Bakhain. I now invite Dr. Surinder Singh, representing Australian Academy of Science, who would talk about AI in agriculture and food production. He is the Chief Research Scientist at CSIRO, Canberra in Australia.
Okay, thank you very much, Professor Sutosh, and thank you to the Egyptian Academy for hosting us. It's been really, really very nice, and I'm honored to be with our distinguished panelists here. I'm going to talk about, let me start my presentation. So I'm going to talk about responsible and sustainable AI in agriculture. So just want to give you a quick overview about what AI can deliver in agriculture. So first of all, feeding global population of 10 billion within the next 30 years presents significant challenges for agriculture and food production. It's been calculated that agriculture systems must increase food production by 70% in the coming decades. To meet this demand sustainably, and that's the important aspect, the sector must undergo substantial structural and automation changes. Artificial intelligence offers promising solutions to these challenges by enabling precision farming, predictive analytics, automated systems. These technologies can enhance productivity and sustainability by optimizing crop yields and managing resources more efficiently. However, it needs to be considered that rapid adoption of AI also introduces ethical, social, and environmental concerns. So the responsible deployment of AI is essential and require robust ethical frameworks, regulatory oversight, and stakeholder collaboration. I'm going to touch on some of these challenges. So I just wanted to, again, outline some of the benefits of AI in agriculture. So AI can offer transformative benefits for agriculture in enhancing efficiency, reducing waste, promoting sustainable practices. For instance, AI-powered tools can analyze vast data sets from sensors, drones, and satellites to provide real-time insights on soil health, weather patterns, crop conditions, leading to automated irrigation, fertilizer use, and minimize environmental impact. This precision agriculture approach has been shown to increase yields by up to 20% on large farms through better timing and planning. And there are many other benefits, as you can see, enumerated. And particularly, I'd like to mention the delivery of benefits from gene editing. Gene-edited crops and alternative food production platforms have the potential to produce more food from lower inputs, which is going to be an ongoing challenge. So just want to now touch on the challenges and ethical considerations around AI deployment within the agriculture. So actually, I can't see the slide there, but yes. So what I wanted to actually highlight, there's a lot of words here, and I'm happy to discuss them if any of you are interested in depth. But it's suffice to say that ethical concerns around AI include algorithmic bias, which may disadvantage small-scale and marginalized farmers. If training data, because AI is all about learning models, and so if the training data favors large operations, this can lead to unfair resource allocation or market exclusion of the small holders or small farm holders. Data privacy is another very critical issue in my mind, as AI systems collect sensitive information from farms, raising the potential for misuse by corporations or cyber attacks that could result in exploitation or security breaches. Job displacement is also a pressing social risk, with automation potentially replacing manual labor in tasks like harvesting, increasing unemployment in rural areas, and widening digital divide between the tech-savvy and the traditional farmers. So I think that as AI gets or takes hold within agriculture, which is happening at a very fast pace, some of these challenges should be kept in mind, and without responsible governance of AI, it could perpetuate inequalities and cause unintended harm. I just wanted to put up here, so this is a model that was published by the OECD, and it sort of takes you, enumerates the steps for responsible use of AI in agriculture. So basically, as you can see, what it means is that the process begins with farmer stakeholder engagement, emphasizing importance of initial collaboration, input from relevant parties. It then progresses to data collection, which involves gathering necessary information for information management. Emulation model development focuses on creating models or simulations based on collected data to predict outcomes or test scenarios. Following this, there must be transparency checks, which are conducted to ensure clarity, openness, and accountability in the process. Risk assessment and governance solutions have to be applied. And finally, feedback and iteration ensures continuous improvement by incorporation feedback and refining the process. So one very successful example is an AI-driven emulator of the process-based crop modeling system developed by Australia, CSIRO, agency that I work for. And this emulator is very successful and allows users to capture the complex dynamics of crop production more simply, and is a win-win situation for the farmers and as well as for environment. So I just want to finish up here. I mean, these are not prescriptive recommendations, but for AI to be a force for good in agriculture, I think some of these recommendations need to be considered. So to promote responsible AI use in agriculture, policymakers, industry leaders, and researchers must act collaboratively. So collaboration is a very key aspect here. First, governments should develop comprehensive regulations that mandate transparency in AI algorithms and protect data privacy, very, very important. Drawing from models like the USDA's and Australian AI strategy, which prioritize safe and innovative investments, contracts between farmers and AI providers should clearly define liability to address legal ambiguities. Education and training programs are crucial to equip farmers with AI literacy, reducing adoption barriers and mitigating job displacement. Industry should invest in inclusive AI development, incorporating diverse datasets to minimize bias and fostering openness for tools, especially for the small farm holders. So I would recommend that these aspects should be considered, and if they can be implemented, they will ensure that AI serves as a force for good in agriculture. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Surinder Singh. I've seen you talk about every possible thing in science in different fora, and now about AI. This is wonderful. Thank you. I invite now Dr. Rohini Shivatsa, who represents Indian National Science Academy, and she's also been leading a community of NTOs and NSOs at Microsoft. I don't know what the acronyms are, but they are very impressive. Thank you very much for joining us. You talk about healthcare and responsible AI, opportunities and imperatives. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Ashutosh, and it's good to be here. If you can get my slides up. Okay, wonderful. So I'm going to speak about healthcare as an example sector, but many of the thematics from here may be relevant to other sectors as well. Before I jump into healthcare as such, I want to give a context for India, because at the end of the day, technology, healthcare is relevant in the context of a society and its challenges and its complexities. So India is large, it's complex. 1.4 billion people. It's young. The median age is 28 years, which presents its own opportunities and challenges. 22 official languages, which makes it almost a subcontinent. Actual number of languages is in the hundreds. 22 are just in the constitution. Fairly significant rural population, but a country that's getting digitally enabled, which means people are using smartphones, people are getting more and more internet access, etc. The reason I put this is because that provides a context for how healthcare needs to be addressed. The second element of India is that it's economically very, very diverse. There is an India that is kind of like Scandinavian India. It's prosperous, it consumes, it aspires. But then there is a large India that is more than 1 billion people, that is kind of the Southeast Asian India or the Sub-Saharan Africa India, because it is more than 1 billion people who are still struggling for basic inclusion. So the challenge and opportunity, and I will talk about why it's an opportunity, is that it is how do we connect all three? With that in mind, where is the healthcare situation in India? Actually, the healthcare reality is very, very stark. There is a shortage of doctors, 3 versus 13 doctors per 10,000 people. So the number of doctors coverage is very, very low. India is facing an increasing chronic health burden of cancer, heart disease, diabetes, which are lifestyle diseases in many parts of the world, but in India, it is a huge healthcare burden. The good thing is that India does have a very large field workers who are called ASHA workers. ASHA, the word in Hindi means hope. But the full form of the term is accredited social health workers. These people are on the feet, in the field and work under fairly diverse, very hostile conditions. So it's a system that's asking for augmentation, not automation. So that's the main takeaway message from this slide. So as you can see, the people who are out there are working with babies. They are working with people who can have telehealth. So where can AI help? If I put that context of diversity, scale, and the fact that you do have people on the field who can work with populations, where can AI really help? So there are all kinds of use cases, and you can imagine places where early screening could reduce the burden on specialists. Early screening, early detection could help potentially later complications, and therefore having lower stress on hospitals. Similarly, telehealth and other ways in which remote monitoring can be done. Language, local language assistance to people who are in the field, whether it's the patients or the workers. So AI as a force multiplier for scarce resource. That's the fundamental point. It is not a replacement. It is a force multiplier for scarce expertise. That is where AI can help. And we are seeing certain signs of it. So fundamentally, what kind of AI? What is the kind of AI that is required? One, it is AI that is responsible, sustainable as a design principle, not an afterthought. Many large organizations, I spent my last 7 years as the CTO for Microsoft India and South Asia, and As an afterthought, it's a patch. As a design principle, it's a different way of thinking. Practical, context aware, efficient, low resource, energy aware, because it has to work in situations where you may not have internet access, where you may not have energy access. It should be able to be fair. It should have local validation and human oversight. Many cases, classical machine learning works just fine. You don't need large language models. Classical machine learning, vision, language, etc., works just fine. In many cases, small language models, which by the way are many of them out there, many of them are open source, they work just fine. You don't always need ChatGPT and large language models. It's important to realize that. So the important point here is that there is a huge role of AI in healthcare as an augmentation, but the kind of AI that's required needs to be efficient, low resource, requires human oversight, requires local context. But how do we do this? And a few examples that I'll share with you. For example, one of them is this lady. I've been known her for many years. It's called Niramai. It is AI plus thermal screening for breast cancer early detection. It's a fairly simple scanner, a tripod, and a local laptop where the algorithm runs. It doesn't have to go to the cloud. It doesn't have to go anywhere else. And those kind of screening camps can be held in remote locations. And that is the kind of AI that augments the local health workers in being able to do early detection. Similarly, another AI example that I would quote is where Bharosa means trust. It's using AI for frontline worker and decision support. The ability for this AI to use local language, many times voice first thinking, not just text, voice first thinking, that helps the local, people on the ground. So by the way, when I mentioned ASHA workers, there are more than 1 million ASHA workers in India. These are non-clinical roles, but there are A&M workers, which are accredited auxiliary nurse for midwives. These are actually clinical workers. They also need help. There are more than 900 million of them. So the ability to help these people with timely triage, timely escalation, and access to a real expert is the way in which AI helps these frontline workers with decision support and triage. How do we do this at scale? That's the question. India has been on this path of what you may call digital public infrastructure. We create physical infrastructure in our worlds to the roads, the electricity, the power plants, etc., so that private sector can innovate on that physical infrastructure. In the digital world, the approach that India has taken is to create these basic building blocks on which private sector innovates. By the way, all of us use digital public infrastructure every day. We don't call it that. The two that we use is email. It is SMTP protocol. It is actually a digital public infrastructure. Second, we use is websites, which is another digital public infrastructure, is a HTTP protocol. We actually use this every day. We just don't call it that. So the idea being, and obviously, as you know, on top of these digital public infrastructures, a tremendous amount of private innovation has happened. Therefore, how do we do this in the area of health? I'll skip this slide. In India, this journey has been going on for almost 2 decades in the areas of identity, payments, and data, which are fundamental digital public infrastructure that allows people to build on top of that. In the area of health, there is a work going on, which is the digital health infrastructure. It's called Ayushman Bharat. It's again an ecosystem approach where data stays where the data has been collected, whether with hospitals or clinicians or diagnostics. But the patient, the individual, has the ability to provide consent to make sure the data can move from one provider to another, and therefore data can be leveraged for AI inferencing at the time of healthcare delivery. A lot of private sector innovation is building on it, because at the end of the day, all that I mentioned about AI as augmentation requires private sector startup innovation to happen at scale. And that is the need of the hour, such that the demographic dividend, the ability for people to innovate in context of the society can happen. And that's what digital public infrastructure allows for. And there is a growing startups and private sector organizations that are building on it. Challenges do remain: data quality, diversity, particularly for training, clinical validation of many of these pathways is still a challenge. Human AI capacity, skills, energy efficient and sustainable AI. These challenges do remain, but there is a path to make sure that we address these and really make AI work where it is needed the most. I will leave with this slide that this article appeared in the recent Economist, looking ahead at 2026, that AI will change India and India will change AI. The reason I say this is that, of course, AI will change every economy, every society, because that's the nature of the general purpose technology. But I think the need for the hour to realize is that how countries like India, like countries with similar challenges, will need to adopt AI in a way that works for them, which is context appropriate, which is energy efficient, which is using the scale of a country like India to really create that private sector innovation, is ways in which we believe that India will shape the way AI will be used in many parts of the world. I'll end with that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rohini, for very insightful talk. I now invite Professor Thomas Craig, representing Leopoldina. He was a senior professor of dermatology at University of Cologne. He would talk about AI for medicine under pressure, easing healthcare burdens, intensifying governance, and challenges. Thinking of all this AI for health, I should tell you a joke. Why AI go to therapy? It had a bite of anxiety about making responsible decisions. This is a ChatGPT joke. Can't put that. My jokes are equally bad, but this is ChatGPT. Okay. And so it tells that things are still improving in AI. We look forward to better jokes next time. Thank you.
Is it working again? Wonderful. Thank you very much for your kind introduction. In my talk, I would like to offer the perspective of the German National Academy of Science, Leopoldina. Building on Dr. Srivasta's input, I will focus on the role of artificial intelligence in healthcare, with particular attention to Germany and Europe. And since I'm a trained dermatologist, I will use dermatology as a concrete example. My main argument is straightforward, and it does not really differ too much from the previous conclusions. AI in medical research and healthcare can strengthen the healthcare system. It can support doctors and nurses. It can improve the accuracy of diagnosis and help us to identify high-risk patients earlier. In this way, AI can clearly relieve pressure on our healthcare system. However, profound technology innovations like AI do not come for free. They also create pressure on society and require new laws and regulations. In Europe, the way we develop and use medical AI is now shaped by the European AI Act. The Act is already in place, but many details of its implementations are still open. If this governance is not applied and further developed in a smart and flexible way, we risk slowing down the very innovations that should help our patients and our healthcare system. Across Europe, healthcare systems are under increasing structural pressure. In contrast to India, demographic aging in Europe is accelerating. and therefore a growing share of the population lives with multiple chronic diseases affecting all tissues and organs. As a result, geomedicine is receiving increasing attention, and many research institutions try to develop approaches to target aging and age-related chronic diseases as a whole. We observe this in most European states, but similar charlatans also occur in Japan and China. At the same time, many European countries face serious shortages of physicians and nursing staff, particularly in rural and under-reserved regions. Current data suggest that this trend will continue, creating a huge gap between the growing need for care and the resources available to provide it. The economic burden is also rising. The development of new drugs and personalized therapies has become increasingly expensive. In this situation, I think we cannot simply continue with more the same. We need to rethink our healthcare system in principle. We need to put much more emphasis on preventive measures. For this, we need new tools and new approaches. Artificial intelligence is one of these tools that might help us keep healthcare both accessible and sustainable. In medicine, we already see digital technology and AI implemented in many ways. Telemedicine supports patients in remote areas. Intelligent devices monitor key health indicators. All this helps to identify high-risk patients early and to concentrate preventive measures on a personalized level. AI-based imaging and video systems help to improve diagnostic in many medical disciplines. Radiology, pathology, and dermatology are extremely good examples. In dermatology, AI has been a valuable innovation for diagnosing diseases such as skin cancer for some time. With AI support, dermatologists and probably also general physicians can assess pigmented lesions more quickly and more accurately and identify so-called red flags that suggest a possible malignant melanoma. This is particularly important in underserved areas without access to specialists, where diagnosis is often delayed with deleterious consequences. But it also affects care in large cities, where AI can save time and help to prioritize patients who need rapid specialist attention. Recent developments have further improved diagnostic performance. For example, a reinforcement learning system for skin cancer diagnosis has now learned the medical consequences of its error by integrating human values and clinical risk in the training process. Explainable AI is important across all medical disciplines because clinicians require an argumentative basis for the diagnosis the AI system is offering. For this reason, the Leopoldina has placed a strong focus on an AI this year, with particular attention for explainable AI in its annual conference. With explainable variables and with human values built into the system, doctors can often make faster decisions with greater confidence. Certainly, AI already plays a central role in many aspects of biomedical research. For example, you heard that as a tool for analyzing data and so on. It's also had a profound influence on the healthcare, as Dr. Srivatsa has already pointed out. In this sense, AI in medicine may even have the potential to democratize healthcare, if you want to say that. It can make expert-level diagnostic support accessible to more people, including those in rural and low-income communities. However, there's also a flip side. It can apply existing inequalities if access to AI tools is unequal, or if training data do not really represent all groups in societies. Bias in data and in users' input can lead to discriminating or simply wrong result. And there's a risk of uncritical acceptance of AI outputs. I'm convinced that AI cannot completely replace medical expertise. The final decision and the responsibility for it must remain with the human clinicians. But AI can help physicians work more efficiently, save time, and use that time for what matters most, the communication with the patient. At the same time, we need transparent, ethical, equitable governance of AI, especially in medical research. This raises the stakes for regulating AI. The European AI Act is the world's first broad cross-sector regulation for artificial intelligence. Adopted 1 year ago, it will shape the use of AI across many sectors. It follows a risk-based approach classifying AI systems from unacceptable to minimal risk. Many AI systems in digital health, however, including medical devices and diagnostic tools, are considered high risk and must meet strict requirements. In practice, however, all this creates a complex regulatory landscape. Different regulation overlaps requirements, not always fully aligned for researchers, hospitals, and companies. This complexity is a real challenge. You have to keep up in mind that in Europe, we have many different healthcare systems in the different states with many complex organizations and the influence of different interest groups. High-risk AI systems must meet strict regulations for transparency, risk management, data government, and post-market monitoring. Unclear definitions and long certification processes add to the difficulties. Some of these pressures from which AI is meant to relieve the clinics and researchers may simply reappear, now placed on regulators, compliance departments, and research teams. What can academies do in these situations? Academies can play an important role in clarifying this regulatory landscape. They can analyze it and provide independent scientific advice on how to implement these rules in an appropriate yet risk-sensitive way, while still supporting innovative technological paths. Moreover, academies can speak up for research. They can argue for a clear and robust safe space for scientific and clinical research within AI regulations. Academies can help broaden the dialogue. Decisions about far-reaching AI systems, including generative AI, should not be left to developers only. They require not only technical expertise, but also ethical and political judgment. This calls for an interdisciplinary dialogue and for the participation of the society and of those who might be affected by discrimination or exclusion. Finally, because academies are embedded in international networks, they can link debates on the European Community AI Act with AI governance discussion in other regions of the world. This helps to avoid fragmented approaches and supports more coherent, globally informed standards for medical AI. The Leopoldina has begun to work on these questions and to formulate recommendations. But this is only a first step. If we want AI in medicine to relieve pressure on health systems and not to create new pressure points in governments, we will need sustained cooperation between scientists, clinicians, ethics, regulators, and the society as a whole. I thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Professor Craig, for your insights into AI in medicine. I now invite for the last talk of this session, Professor Mayank Vatsa, representing Indian National Science Academy, and his talk will be on fair and privacy preserving generative AI.
Thank you, Professor Sharma, and thanks the IAP organizers for holding this particular session. I'll be actually focusing on something little orthogonal. While we have discussed a lot about the positive usage of generative AI and how actually ChatGPT is helping us do our research better, I'll have a slightly different view in terms of that's a little scary as well. But disclaimer, we are actually living in a foundation model, in a world of foundation model. which has both like discriminative power as well as generative power. Like these are two machine learning paradigms in which we all try to develop different models which are specific to like language models like LLMs, chat GPTs, vision models which understand images, and audio models which understand audio, and we create chatbots, and the multimodal models which actually combine all of the modalities together, and that can give you a feeling that you're talking to a human being uh, and not talking to actually a platform. Right. So this is how actually the whole paradigm is growing, and it won't be actually unfair to say that we are actually day in day out utilizing these services. In fact, I can make my pet a super dog with just a mouse click, right? They have made actually the life of each one of us scientists as well as a normal human being who are, or my father who is almost 80 years old, he can actually be more creative and he can actually create newer information, right? However, not everything actually is going to be so rosy. Means, yes, you can do things in 10 seconds for a chemistry experiment, but are we really sure that those experiments are correct or not? Right. So there are many challenges. I can't in 10 minutes, I can't talk about all the challenges of generative AI, but therefore I have picked up actually few interesting challenges where we should be aware of, and we should be looking at how to further improve these models. So let's understand 2-3 challenges in next few minutes. So if you're using ChatGPT or any of the LLMs, one can actually generate not safe at work content. In fact, that's a huge problem. Deepfake has become a huge problem for many, many countries, right? So be it election time, be it any war time, or be it any time. In healthcare also, like some celebrity coming and selling you a drug, which may not be altogether like tested or even actually a valid drug altogether, right? So, or create a painting and sell the painting in millions of dollars in the name of Van Gogh, where that painting does not even exist, right? But the style exists, or creates completely offensive content, which probably disturb the entire communities, right? And not only that, the generative models, at least the way at least I view this, they're essentially rot learning algorithms, or to a very large extent. While they understand the data distribution, that's a claim, but at the same time, they have been also shown that they simply memorize the information. And these are two classical examples. On your other side, you see this is a case from OpenAI versus New York Times, where the New York Times article and ChatGPT generated article has huge similarity, almost 80 to 90% similarity, and that's why New York Times is in court against OpenAI, claiming that, hey, you have actually stolen our data. The second, the image example that I'm showing over here is a very popular stable diffusion model, an open source model, a generative model, where the bottom row actually shows the lion data set on which the model has been trained, and the upper row actually shows the generated outputs from the stable diffusion model. And you can actually compare that it's essentially a memorization rather than actually a creation. Right? So if you're doing an experiment, if you're writing a research paper with ChatGPT, are we really sure that we are being creative, or rather than actually some memory from somewhere is just like helping you, or even like giving you a sense of helping you with respect to the output that you observe. And it's not that necessarily memory or it's like they're creative. At times they're creative, they're wrongly being creative. And here are a few examples. If I give a very long prompt, right? I'll just take an example because I'm coming from India. In India, we are crazy about cricket game. I'll pick the third example: a cricket ground with unbowled overs where the stumps are unset and the pitches are unmoved. So all of them are actually clear instructions. If we as human being, we can understand what these actually mean, right? When I say stumps are unset, this means the stump should not be there on the pitch. The pitch should have actually more grasses if they are unmoved. But be it ChatGPT, be it Grok, be it SDXL, all of them have actually did not follow the instruction. Even the very next example of the florist bouquet example, again, the instructions are not being followed. And the most recent is our nano banana, right? That is touted as being the very, very powerful tool. Even that is also not behaving as if like we are giving a certain instruction, we are giving instruction to generate a kind of image, and then they are not following our instructions properly, right? So these models do not completely understand what we intend to say. Here is another example. I've been using this example to highlight the bias factor that are there actually in many of these models. And again, these are Mid-Journey, DALL-E, and Llama are very powerful image generation models. And if I give a prompt, that image of an Indian house, these are the outputs. And we have repeated this experiment multiple times, and most of the time, in fact, I would say 99% of the times we generate these kinds of images. And by the way, 99% Indians do not live in these kinds of houses anymore. They may have lived in, let's say, in 1810 or so, or even let's say 1950. But today means we don't live in these kinds of houses. In fact, the third house actually which Llama has generated is a luxurious house, which many of us can't even afford in urban house in urban cities. So this is where actually the bias actually comes into the picture. They have the knowledge or information which is not relevant anymore, or which is kind of obfuscating the reality, right? Here is another example from one of very recent paper. If I actually give anatomical prompts, particularly very useful in healthcare settings, if I give anatomical prompts, these models simply don't understand it. Like majority of the times they fail to understand what we are trying to ask, right? So a female sitting on a male lying down, I don't know what actually it represents, but it has created, the model has created this output. And we have many such examples showcasing the limitations of existing models. While these are very powerful, but they still have actually a lot of issues that actually we need to cater. And when we talk about models, like talking to the models, the major challenge actually we also bring in is with respect to language. The world has over 7,000 languages, but the models understand barely 100. Right. So like even they don't understand all 22 Indic languages. Like if I ask ChatGPT to understand, give me a response in all 22 Indic languages, they can't. They're very low resource languages of the world, and they simply can't understand a single word. We have many examples highlighting this kind of issues. And given that means Global South actually represents a rich cultural context. If I show them an image of Cairo, very likely, the old Cairo particularly, very likely they may misunderstand the whole context altogether. Now, this is where actually I bring in the preachy hat mode, that we are building the AI models for the billions. We are not building the AI models for few millions or few users, right? When we are touching the lives of billion users, be it the Aadhaar system in India or any other system across the world, we need to actually ensure that the systems are reachable, right? Systems are usable by billions of population, right? So multilingual context, the cultural context, and the overall scenarios that actually we ensure that we don't get just the rote learning information or the data that is, we should get the data that is more creative rather than actually simply that is actually mined from the large data sets. And the core conflict is also with respect to right to be forgotten and right to be represented. Means when we talk about, means we all need to be, the model should understand 7,000 languages, that's actually right to be represented. But at the same time, as an individual, we should not be actually like kind of memorized in the model space, and that can create a lot of deep fakes and misinformation. And therefore, if I decide to actually be excluded or expelled from the model should actually allow me to be forgotten from the space. And this is actually, if you think more closely, this is essentially the conflicting information that at some point of time we want the whole world to be there as much as inclusive possible. But at the same time, at individual level, we want to be if we want to be excluded, then actually that facility should all be available, right? And how do we achieve these kinds of privacy, utility, and fairness context, this is still a research challenge, and therefore we have a long way to go. And the solution, actually, I strongly believe is that we need to actually, as Rohini mentioned, that fairness as an ingredient, not as an afterthought. And but at the same time, we should also not forget that the responsible AI actually is built upon responsible ML data sets. So we need to have a large understanding of, or clear understanding of, what do we mean by fairness and privacy preserving ML data sets. And the final two questions, as a food for thought for all of us, is that who decides which languages and culture are represented enough, and by what matrices? And can the Global South lead in defining responsible AI standards rather than adapting Western framework? With these two open-ended questions, thank you very much once again.
Thank you, Professor Vatsa. Professor Vatsa is a professor of AI at the Indian Institute of Technology, Jodhpur. Thank you very much for a very interesting presentation. Now, we had a fantastic session, totally wonderful, a lot of food for thought. So the session is now open for discussion, questions. Yeah, there are 3 hands that went up there. Do we have a mic? Get them there. Please identify yourself.
Sure. I'm Diane Negra. I'm a professor at University College Dublin, a member of the IEP board. Just to thank everybody, I think the contributions to thought on this extremely important topic were really, it's a pleasure to listen to everybody. I just want to come back to something that Stephanie had touched on, because I know you and I share an interest in postgraduate training, and you had mentioned the necessity for, or I might be extrapolating, Stephanie, but it seemed to me you were touching on expanded definitions of digital literacy that can incorporate a judicious use of AI. And I'm just wondering, taking what you said as kind of a broad set of statements, how we could operationalize some of this into postgraduate training, with a particular emphasis on the urgency of what you talked about in terms of AI and research integrity. It seems to me that you made a number of really important points, but then there's a question of, okay, how do we now then put this into practice? If you have any thoughts on that, I'd really welcome them.
Can I go ahead? Can I make an answer?
Yes, please. Go ahead.
Very briefly. We certainly need to educate, and our students certainly need to understand the implications of what they're doing. But my view is that the first step is to educate the supervisors and the academics who are leading, the mentors who are leading the studies, to understand what kind of AI the students need. Sometimes it's not particularly sophisticated, but the other, that's one of the things that I think is critical. And the other is perhaps we need to develop a way of explaining how an AI or AIs were used in a study or in an article or a thesis. And for me, as a scientist, that kind of goes along with the methods that you used in your experimentation, but it does need to be made transparent.
Thank you. Yes, next. Please pass on the mic there.
It is here. May I use it?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. My name is Joachim von Braun. I'm the president of the Vatican Academy of Science. We are engaged in AI and developments and humanity since about a decade. Our most recent conference was on AI and welfare of children. Now, I know that Australia has decided to block access to children under 16 to social media. Leopoldina has recommended the same for children under 14. We have not come to such a conclusion of an age limit, but have argued that the burden is on corporations who have established misleading algorithms, and on parents and on the education system. I would like to ask the panel where you are coming out in terms of protecting child welfare. We also have philosophized about a Hippocratic oath of people who are writing applied mathematics algorithms. So we have a serious problem of child welfare related to AI. What are your proposed solutions?
Is it a question to a specific panelist?
Well, maybe Leopoldina and Australia can speak.
Okay.
Although you talked about health and agriculture, which I was very interested in, but maybe you can give your academy's positions.
Dr. Surinder Singh, would you like to respond?
Hello? Yeah. Is it okay? Well, I think that you already touched on the recent announcement from Australia about restricting the access to social media platforms for children or under 16. So I think that's probably, if I'm not wrong, one of the world firsts that's happening in that domain. I think that if I can speak about for the academy in Australia, I think they are supportive of being responsible in how AI is deployed in different domains. So in the domain of agriculture, I think that there is a lot of sensitivity around the collection of data, because data is the currency which AI relies on. So the key issue with data collection is that if these large data sets that have been collected from different sources ends up in the hands of 2 or 3 main AI data aggregators, I think then they can use and exploit the access to these large data sets. So how data is collected and what are the transparency guidances around the collection of these data sets, I think that's probably going forward quite critical for AI. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
There were certainly some discussions within the Leopoldina group about the recommendations, and it's certainly quite difficult to make a strict age limit, considering the personal individual developments of children and the exposure to AI and similar structures from the beginning on or later on. And I think really the family has some major responsibility in that end.
We're running out of time very quickly. Please keep your questions within 20 seconds and answers within 30 seconds. Okay, yeah, go ahead. We have a mic there.
Yes, actually, I have a question, or more is a general thought. I didn't see a discussion about one point which to me is relevant. My name is Gianfranco Pacchioni from Accademia dei Lincei. Well, we know artificial intelligence is based on data, and we know we are providing data for free because we are following open science, open access, open data philosophy. So we are providing this data for free, but these are very valuable data which are produced with public money, which are validated through a scientific procedure. And these data are used by public companies, private companies, sorry, who are selling their product. Because when we're talking about education, some universities are already starting to buy products like ChatGPT for distributing and let them used by the students. But I checked just right now on the website, if a university with 10,000 students want to provide the professional version of ChatGPT to all the students, 10,000, this costs about $3 million per year. And so I think this is a problem because it's a short circuit. We are producing data, providing data for free, and then we have to pay back when we want to use the tool. So I think we should discuss, and universities should join together to make a simple deal. We provide the data because we will continue to have open science and open data and open access, but we want to have the tools, the professional version of the tools for free, because this is much more powerful.
Very important question. Who owns the data? Who monetizes the data? Is data or algorithm more important? There are very many questions about data ownership, data use, data transport, data localization, and so on. So anyway, is there a quick response to this? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So you're absolutely right. Like means in terms of we are the producers of the data. Means I mean, in India also we are producing a lot of data and making it publicly available from the government funding. And at the same time, these databases are being used by different agencies. But we have to understand for a machine learning pipeline, for AI pipeline, data is the first part, but the second part is algorithm development. And the corporations are or the companies are actually including a lot of putting a lot of money for creating that particular model, right? So having a system which is free or a pro version which is free for everyone may not be feasible in terms of for the universities also, like again, like the universities with 10,000 students, 20,000 students, it may not be free. Means unless until there is something like some restricted version are there. Like for example, Gemini has actually started giving the restricted version in terms of how much you can use, right? And in fact, OpenAI also came to India and have started actually giving 1 year free subscription, not the pro version, but at least the base go live version is free for the entire India altogether right now. But again, like we have to remember that giving it free, it's not free actually. It's like they're now creating more data from your usage, which is feeding back to them for their next version of algorithms. So there is nothing going to be free, whether we provide data in lieu of our models or their models and use our data in their research. So it's a cyclic process, right? So at least in my opinion, nothing is going to be free, whether we pay through money or we pay through our data. So that's one of the payment mode has to be there.
Okay, so that kind of we're going to conclude the session because I have been asked now to terminate the session, and so we're going to do just that. I was supposed to summarize in 5 minutes the vast amount of information that was presented here. Clearly, that's not possible. So I would like to summarize in 2 lines, and this is another Chat GPT joke. And so this one says, why did AI become a sad comedian? A sad comedian, an oxymoron, where it says, because it wanted to make humans laugh, but it ended up making them think. So we did a lot of thinking today, and so this is going to continue. You can you can continue your discussion out there when we break for coffee. Thank you very much. I again want to thank the Egyptian Academy on behalf of all of us, and also I'm very thankful they made me run up and down the podium, so I got some exercise for today. Thank you very much, and let's break for tea.